Hi, welcome back to the Resilient Kitchen video series. This video will be focused on strategies for treating drinking water after a natural disaster event. This is part of a wider video series which has become a bit of a passion project for me as I process living in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene that impacted our western North Carolina mountains in September of 2024. I teach the physics of food and cooking with a focus on sustainability from this Spice Lab here in the Physics and Astronomy Department at Appalachian State University. But I became aware after that storm, when we had no power, water, cell service, or road access, that my own kitchen wasn't as resilient as it could have been, and resiliency is an important layer of sustainability. I've also learned that it doesn't have to cost a lot or be particularly cumbersome to be better prepared. And so my goal here, my hope is that through this video series, other people can be better prepared in advance of such events. Some of these events are unannounced, and so building a resilient kitchen kit well in advance to just have stashed and in your home somewhere is a great strategy. And then if you happen to have advance notice, like for a hurricane, I'll have some tips and tricks to do in the days before the storm to make your kitchen even more prepared and resilient. There's going to be a lot of information in this video. To help with the information overload, I have compiled a summary document of the information presented here, which includes links to the CDC and other organizations that can be printed and included in your Resilient Kitchen Kit, so you can have access to that information if you're without cell service or power after the storm. Alrighty, let's talk a little bit about drinking water. So the great news is that before the storm, you have the luxury of safe drinking water running out of your tap. So there's no need to head to the grocery store for cases of bottled water. My number one tip for pre-storm preparedness for drinking water is to stash as much drinking water as possible at home from your tap before the storm. This is super easy to do while you still have confidence in the quality of your tap water. And if your water is compromised by the storm, you will thank yourself for every drop you saved. Make every effort to avoid having to capture water from streams or lakes after an event that may have had significant flooding. In these times, the waterways are mixing pools of water from many sources, and so extra caution is the best strategy. Sometimes, however, this is the only option, such as if the emergency was unexpected. In this case, look for running water like a stream or a river rather than a stagnant body of water. For your drinking water stash, think creatively about containers you already have. A great water storage hack is to keep a box of gallon Ziploc bags in your Resilient Kitchen prep kit. For just a few dollars, you can instantly have clean, safe storage for 50 or more gallons of safe drinking water that's sealed up, and you can easily dry and reuse these bags after the storm. 5-gallon buckets were indispensable in our storm and are a good idea to have around. They're inexpensive, they stack easily, they work well for toting water from safe water distribution locations. If you're using these to hold drinking water, you can have a roll of these food-safe 5-gallon bucket liners in your prep kit to make sure that your water is in contact with safe, clean surfaces. If you're tight on space, there's also these collapsible buckets that can also be really helpful. Since we have a water well in our home, when we lose power, we also lose our water flow. So we also keep a couple gallons of drinking water in our basement for surprise power outages. You'll want to buy these from a grocery store so you know that they're sealed and sterilized and safe to drink for a long period of time. For water intended for washing, which we'll talk about in another video, and toilet flushing, your bathtub is your ready-made and very large water storage vessel. I'd recommend a couple of these silicone plugs for your Resilient Kitchen prep kit to place over your tub drain in case your drain has a small leak. Alternately, a plastic bag duct taped around the drain before you fill it when it's still dry will also serve to make sure you won't lose this stored water. This is also your best backup drinking water stash if you run out of the water you gathered for drinking. The CDC recommends that you have 1 gallon of safe, clean drinking water per day per person for drinking and sanitation, such as cooking and teeth brushing. Please refer to the CDC's website before the storm to make sure you're up to date with their latest recommendations. Let's talk about purifying drinking water. It's important that you have the equipment pre-purchased in your home to treat unsafe drinking water in case you run out of your stash, you didn't have any advance notice of the storm, or you have compromised city or well water issues. There are various methods to purify drinking water based on different needs. My goal here is to summarize 3 of these and the associated equipment, focusing on inexpensive options, and then you can decide what's best for your needs. The best method or combination of methods is different depending on the starting quality of the water you're treating. Water can be filtered, removing certain particle sizes, including pathogens, treated to kill or disable pathogens, or filtered to remove certain chemicals. First, to filter out particles, including some pathogens, have a Sawyer-type hollow fiber membrane filter that filters to 0.1 microns absolute, pre-purchased and ready in your preparation kit. Be sure to keep the printed instructions with the filter since you may not have cell service or a powered electronic device after the storm. And be sure to store these in a place in your home that won't freeze, as this can rupture these filters and reduce their effectiveness. It's also a great idea to try out your filter when it arrives so you have some confidence that you know how to use it and how to backwash it before it's needed. These filters can filter 100,000 gallons of water if cared for properly. If the water you're filtering is visibly dirty with lots of turbidity, it's a good idea to run it through either a coffee filter or even just a piece of cloth before using your finer filter. These pour over coffee cones and filters work great as pre-filters, and bonus points, you then have what you need for the critical morning cup of coffee from water boiled in your camp stove, which for me was super important. Now, these filters are great for removing dirt, bacteria, and protozoa, but cannot guarantee that they remove viruses, as viruses are very small. So a second purification strategy is necessary. Treating water to kill or disable pathogens can be done by boiling, by ultraviolet light, or by chemical additives. Let's talk about those one at a time. First, let's talk about boiling. If you live in a place where you have an outdoor porch or a yard, I'm going to recommend boiling with a camp stove, which is another item for your kitchen prep box, because boiling is foolproof and you can use the stove for other important tasks, like making that aforementioned coffee and also heating and cooking your food. A camp stove and fuel is probably the single most important item to have ready, and there's a wide range of camp stove options. I'll go into more details of this in another video, but I would recommend that you choose a stove that can take multiple fuel sources. Both of these stoves have adapters that can use any of these fuels. The high temperature of boiling water causes proteins within the microorganisms to lose their structure or denature, which is really more about chemistry than physics, but once done, it's irreversible and effectively inactivates the pathogens. The CDC recommends boiling for 1 minute for elevations lower than 6,500 feet and 3 minutes if you live at 6,500 feet or higher. Please use so much caution when using camp stoves. Many of these are not very stable and can be very dangerous. And be sure you're only using them outdoors in a well-ventilated area. If you have a gas stove in your home, it's recommended that you not use this if you don't have electricity, because you won't be able to turn on your exhaust hood. And without a ventilation system, the products of combustion enter your home, which is a health risk. The gas stove connected to your gas grill outside, however, is a great choice. Be sure you have enough sufficient fuel on hand. My trials showed that about one of these 1-pound propane canisters will boil about 10 gallons of room temperature water. I would not recommend that you store these fuel canisters in your kitchen prep box. The recommendation is that they're stored outdoors, if possible, in a well-ventilated area, and always are kept upright. Make sure that you pack a large box of matches in your kitchen prep kit. One last note about boiling. If you're fortunate enough to have an electric generator, I'd recommend purchasing one of these electric immersion water boilers. This came in very handy for us, not only to boil water, but also to warm dish and washing water. They come in small sizes like this 300-watt version to boil a couple cups of water, or larger wattages if you want to boil a whole pot of water for sterilization while your generator's running. Be sure you're running your generator outside in a well-ventilated area away from any open windows. Okay, moving on to ultraviolet light. If you live in a building without easy access to the outside, so you can't set up a camp stove, I'd recommend ultraviolet or UV light for your second level of sterilization. The best tool for this is the SteriPen. which exposes the water to short wavelength, high energy light, which penetrates the virus and damages its DNA and RNA, making it unable to replicate. For a full liter or quart of water, the purification time is usually 90 seconds. Submerge the SteriPen's UV lamp and sensors in the water and stir until the light turns off. It's especially important that you first filter the water, since UV sterilization is not effective in murky water. If you have no other options, you can place filtered water in a clear glass or plastic bottle and place it outside in the sun. The ultraviolet light from the sun will eventually damage the viruses. The difficulty here is that the level of UV radiation is variable across the globe and even day to day, and so it's difficult to come up with a foolproof strategy. If it's your only option, it's better than nothing. 6 hours in full sun or up to 48 hours in cloudy conditions is recommended. Okay, third, we're going to talk about chemical additives. If you don't have easy access to the outdoors for camp stove setup and don't have a UV sterilization tool, because those are a bit pricey, you can use chemical additives as your secondary sterilization strategy. The CDC recommends adding 8 drops, or a little less than 1/8 of a teaspoon, of 5 to 9% unscented household bleach to 1 gallon of water. Stir that really well, let it sit for 30 minutes. Note that Clorox does have about a 1-year shelf life from the date of manufacture, so it's a good idea to change this out regularly and buy a fresh bottle before a storm if you have some advance notice. There are other chemical water treat options like those used by backpackers. Choose whatever strategy works best for your situation and budget. Lastly, if you're concerned about chemicals that may be in your water, you'll want to use a granular activated carbon filter, which works through adsorption, trapping chemicals as water passes through the material. Look for filters that are NSF ANSI 53 certified for the chemical that you're most concerned about. This certification means that the product has been tested to reduce specific health-related contaminants to levels at or below the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency standards. Some of these have additional compounds besides activated carbon to trap specific chemicals. Be sure to change these filters at the interval recommended by the manufacturer, since these cannot be backwashed. Now, these inexpensive at-home filters can't trap all chemicals. That requires industrial scale water treatment facilities. But if those facilities are not available at the moment, this is another step to help remove some of the chemicals that may be in your drinking water. Okie dokie, I hope that's a decent primer for drinking water purification options. There are many others also. I hope this helps you make some more informed decisions about what's right for your situation. Remember that there's a summary document available in the documents link of this website. Lastly, if you have the resources, think about other people in your life who could use some help gathering these supplies to be more prepared. If you can purchase a few extra items to share, go for it. And if you find yourself in a post-storm situation and have a resilient kitchen kit with some of this equipment, share it with your neighbors. This equipment can be used to treat water of not only your home, but several other homes. We learned that community connection was so critical and literally was magical in those first post-storm days. Okay, on to the next video on resilient food and cooking strategies. Thanks so much for following along.